Hey there, and welcome to another one of my deck guides on competitive decks in Star Wars Unlimited. If you've noticed and if you've been subscribed to my channel, I'm not necessarily doing deck reviews on decks that have already been established as meta decks. Those would be Green or Command Boba, Green or Command Iden, and Green or Command Sabine. I think that Luke is a very underplayed leader right now, and I actually played somebody who had this deck, and it was a very, very, very fun deck to play against, and I felt like this person had actually created something relatively unique. So I'm going to talk through this deck. It does play Command, and it doesn't always play Energy Conversion Lab, which is the ambush base, but I think that this deck is very, very good. I've seen it beat Iden, I've seen it beat Sabine, and I have actually played against it quite a bit with Boba, and it's been done a good job. It's lost some games and won some games, which means that this deck does have the possibility to go into a tournament and win by surprising your opponent. If you're not playing a tier 1 deck, sometimes you can get those wins by playing decks that are not necessarily tier 1. But before we get into things here, I'm going to be opening a weekly play pack. Just picked it up today, and I've only opened one of these things, and I just really hope I get a foil. The pack does seem a bit bent, so I feel like I'm gonna get a foil. We'll see. My luck's been pretty bad. Whoa! Well, I dropped them all. Awesome. No foil, no foil. A-Wing, Waylay, and General Veers. Very happy with those cards, though. Now I have a playset of the A-Wings here. Very cool. All right, well, let's get started in this deck guide. So I know some of this is cut off here. I'm going to be going through every single card and giving my commentary, but there's a lot of one-ofs in this deck. It's a very fun deck. The link is in the description. So let's get started here. So right away, we're going to start with Battlefield Marine. Not much needs to be said about this vanilla creature. It's got the best stats at 2 in the game. It's a 3/3 for 2. Not much else needs to be said. This card really is there to help slow down your opponent and to attack into early units and trade if possible. And this unit does that, right? It kills almost everything on the next turn because it has that 3 power, and a lot of times it might even live if the thing it attacks into has only 2 power. So it's a very, very good card. Nothing else really needs to be said about it. Next is Colonel Yularen. This card is played for that incidental life gain. Whenever you play a green unit, including this one, heal 1 damage from your base. What's interesting is there's a 7-cost card in the deck called U-Wing Reinforcement. It lets you look at the top 10 cards of your deck. You get to play up to 3 units with a combined cost 7 or less and play each of them for free. So when you play Yularen, he could actually heal 3 if he is one of the cards that you play. So you could play Yularen and a Battlefield Marine and then something else, and you will end up gaining 3 life off of that play. That's very, very good, and sometimes that can keep you in the game. So he does have some combo potential there. Another card that's played at 2 is Leia Organa. She is cunning, which you'll notice is not playable in the deck, but if you can play this with a U-Wing Reinforcement, right, she comes down without the penalty. And so she can come down and tap down a unit that you are hoping to tap down. There's only one of in the deck, but it is nice to be able to hit that with U-Wing Reinforcement and tap down one of your opponent's really powerful units, slow them down even more. And it's also in here because you can play it for 2 more at 4 and just shut down a unit. So sometimes that is still playable. And if you draw it and you don't want it, you just resource it. So there's really no penalty in many situations to playing this card. You either hit it with U-Wing or you can resource it early, mid-game. Next is going to be Regional Governor. This card is quite good. When played, name a card. While this unit is in play, opponents can't play the named card. I've drawn connections to a card called Meddling Mage from Magic the Gathering that does a very similar thing. This card's quite good because you can name cards that you know your opponent, that you either saw in game 1 or you know is playable in that deck. And you can name a card that would be really unfortunate to see at that moment in time. Sometimes it's an early unit like A-Wing, and like here's A-Wing right here, right? Sometimes it's an A-Wing, and sometimes it's a late game card. And Regional Governor can be played in any way. So against Boba, you can say Fett's Fire Spray, which is the 5/6 ship that comes in untapped. you can just say that so they can't play it. And sometimes that's Boba Fett's win condition. And so you can actually prevent them from playing that win condition. And I can tell you that I have played against this deck, and if your opponent knows what they're doing and they name the right card, it can be very punishing. Next is Restored Arc 170, in my opinion, one of the coolest looking ships with that really cool exhaust trail. It's a 2/3 for 2 on turn 1 that has Restore 1, so it's just a really good value in space. It's not going to die right away, it's going to restore a bunch of life, and you're going to be happy with that in this deck, because this deck is all about getting to the end game. Next is Luke's Lightsaber. This has a lot of aggro potential, +3/+1, so you can just really put a clock on your opponent, but also has a ton of combo potential with Luke. If attached in the unit is Luke Skywalker, heal all damage from him and give him a shield token. This deck plays the unit Luke Skywalker, and it has the leader Luke Skywalker, so it has a lot of targets, and that's why this deck plays 3 copies of it. It's getting the maximum potential out of this card because of the list. It's very, very interesting. So moving on to 3 drops here. Admiral Akbar, it's just 1 copy in the deck. It's removal, right? So when played, you may deal damage to a unit equal to the number of units you control in its arena. So that's quite good. And it also has Restore, so it can heal 1 when it attacks. That's that can be incidental. Also, you can play this with U-Wing Reinforcement and get a bunch of, you could end up removing something on your opponent's side of the field when you get that when played effect. It's very, very good. And what's interesting about Akbar is you can play the other 2 units and then play Akbar and hit something for 3 or more, which is really good. Next is Echo-Based Defender. It has Sentinel. It's a 4/3. Nothing else much needs to be said other than this card is really there to stop your opponent early and late game, because you can play this off a U-Wing and throw down a Sentinel, and your opponent thinks they might have lethal, and you can just throw down a Sentinel and prevent them from attacking your base. And it also trades in with a lot of early stuff. You often want to ECL this or Energy Conversion Lab ambush this card to remove a really powerful unit that your opponent has played. Next is Fleet Lieutenant. It's a 3/3. When played, you may attack with the unit. If it's a rebel, it's +2/+0 for this attack. I believe every card in the deck is a rebel. Maybe one. I think Yularen is the only one that's not a rebel. Fleet Lieutenant just allows you to get better trades, right? So you can give one of your units +2, and it gives it enough power to attack in and kill Boba Fett leader unit, Sabine leader unit. It just helps you remove those really nasty space units you don't want to see, and it helps you clean it up. And he's there to do that mainly, and also get another 3/3 body on the field. So even though this isn't an aggro deck, it still has a lot of utility by giving you attack to remove stuff. Instead of attacking base for damage, you are going to be attacking into units. Next is Yoda. I hate this card because it's so good. It's a 2/4, so 4 toughness is a really good point marker in this game. When something has 4 toughness, it's very hard to kill with the unit early on. It has Restore 2, and when defeated, choose any number of players, they each draw a card. What's so good about this card is the when defeated clause basically means when this unit dies, your opponent gets to replace it. So you kill it, which is nice, but then they do get to draw a card, which it's just kind of a lose-lose for your opponent, and this card is just super good. I think it's without this card, I don't think this deck would be playable. It gives you Restore 2 on turn 2, which is a very high restore ratio for what this card does, and if it doesn't get removed, you're probably going to win the game just because you're going to live long enough to get to the end game. Next is Resupply. This helps you ramp into the end game. This card is quite good if you're in a good position, you have stability, you can take up your turn just resupplying and attacking in to gain some life. Next is Strike True. There's 2 copies in the deck. A friendly unit deals damage to its power to an enemy unit. What's interesting about this card is all of the removal except for 1, it gets around leaders, or it will hit leaders. There's a lot of removal in this game that says target non-leader unit. This card lets you target anything. And so with the amount of endgame that this deck is playing, a lot of times Strike True means you can take out any unit on the field quite easily, because there's a lot of high power cards. There's a lot of ways to get lots of power onto a unit with Luke's lightsaber, Obi-Wan with his experience tokens, or with other sort of buffs in the deck. So it's quite good, and I have found that it being able to target a leader is quite relevant. So moving on to 4 drops here, right away we got Bright Hope. It's a Sentinel, 2/6 for 4 in space. Really slows the game down. When played, you may return a friendly non-leader ground unit to its owner's hand. If you do, draw a card. Really, really good because you can return Akbar, draw a card, and then replay Akbar for more removal. So this deck has a lot of recursive value, and you're going to continue to see that. That's kind of the theme of Heroism Commander White Green, is just lots of recursive value, and this deck will live a long time and it will get that value, which we'll see. Next is Takedown. It's one of the best removal removal events in the game. It can hit anything technically, even if it's a leader. It just has to have 5 or less remaining HP. Very, very good. Next is 5 drops. Vanquish, defeat a non-leader unit. It's just a very good way to take out those problematic units like Fett's Fire Spray in space. You just spend 5 resources and remove it and get rid of it. Don't worry about it anymore. And it's just a good card. It allows you to remove big things, and when you're playing aggro, you just sort of resource this because you'd rather be playing other things than this because it costs too much resources. Traitorous, man, this card is... I don't like seeing this card when I'm playing aggro. It slows the game down by stealing a unit, and then you can also use that unit to kill another unit and trade them out, which is very, very good. So this thing can steal everything from a Boba Fett to a Falcon to an A-Wing. It's very good and can sometimes shift the tempo of the game quite dramatically. I hate seeing this card. It really messes with my brain when my opponent steals one of my cards. My brain fizzles out. But yeah, this card is really good in this deck. I think that it's smart to play it. And this does feel like a control deck a little bit, like a life gain control deck, but then it has an endgame. And usually people are playing Iden for that, and I think this deck has enough restore with the units that you don't have to worry about your life, really, because you have more life gain than Iden does. Obi-Wan Kenobi here, 6-drop. It's a 4/6 with Sentinel. Again, notice all the Sentinel themes. You're really just trying to stay alive, because once you get to 7 and 8, you're going to win the game. When defeated, give 2 experience tokens to another friendly unit. If it's a force unit, draw a card. So it hits Yoda and all the Lukes in the deck. And man, when that Obi-Wan dies and they pump up their leader Luke and give it 2 experience tokens and they get to draw a card, I mean, that makes Luke a 6/9 and oh man, pun intended there. But also, if Luke has a shield on it with Luke's lightsaber, Luke is a Voltron at that point. He can be very strong, and that can really punish the opponent when you remove this. That's only 6-drop, so 7-drop. We got the really cool Luke Skywalker Jedi Knight unit, not the non-leader. It's a great finisher. It's a 6/7. It has Restore 3, so it helps you stay alive after you play it. And it's got built-in removal. Give an enemy unit -3/-3, which gets around shields. If a friendly unit was defeated for this phase, give an enemy unit -6/-6. There's almost nothing in the game that lives through that -6. That is very, very strong. This card is really good. And if you get to ambush this card, you get to kill something, probably kill something else, and restore 3. So if you don't use that ambush early, you can use it late game and do some pretty wild stuff like that. Next is U-Wing Reinforcement. This is the reason why this deck is in green. 7 lets you search the top 10 cards of your deck for up to 3 units with combined cost 7 or less and play each of them for free. Man, that is insane. That lets you swarm. It lets you dig for an answer. It's just such a good card to be able to look through that many cards and play whatever you want. If you notice that most of the deck is 3-drops and 2-drops, so a lot of times you can play a 3-drop and 2 2-drops, and that is enough to swing the game in your favor again. And there's many copies of this in the deck, so 3 copies in the deck. So you're just going to keep doing this over and over and over again, keep gaining life, and your opponent's eventually not going to be able to keep up. 8 drops here, home 1, 7/7, restore 2. It's a finisher. It helps get you restore. It has immediate impact because when played, you get to play a heroism unit from your discard pile, and it costs 3 less. So you could play anything. You could replay a Luke if you had enough resources, but it also gives each friendly unit restore 1. So if you have other units out, they will then start gaining you even more life. Yoda will gain you 3 life. Luke Skywalker will gain you 4 life, and so on, right? Because restore 1 can stack. So it's a card that allows you to stay in the game even longer, because playing this finisher isn't the end game. It's after you play these and continue to play U-Wings and continue to play Lukes, where you will just outvalue your opponent because you're replaying everything. and they can't keep up because every time they remove a unit, you're just going to replay it for free with all these sort of combo effects. Next is the base. So that's the list, really. I mean, that's pretty much how the deck plays. Energy Conversion Lab is the best base in the game. Uncontested, straight up, it's pretty much consensus now. You do give up 5 life to have an ambush ability, play a unit that costs 6 or less from your hand, give an ambush for this phase. I just realized you cannot play Luke Skywalker because he's 7. Didn't even know that. Which gives you even more removal options. You have so many in the deck, but now you can turn any of your units into a possible removal. Slows the game down for your opponent. You can use Obi-Wan to attack in and get his amazing bonuses when he dies. So sometimes you can attack Obi-Wan into something and Obi-Wan will die right away, but then you're able to give a force unit 2 experience tokens and draw a card. There's a lot of die triggers in this deck. For example, when Yoda dies, he draws you a card. Those effects are really, really good because they play well with Energy Conversion Lab. So you do get some synergy there as well. When sometimes you ambush something in and you kill what you ambush, but then you die too, you can still get that benefit. Next is the leader. Lots of synergy with Luke in the deck. There's a lot of force stuff with Obi-Wan Kenobi. There's the Luke's lightsabers. It's just a really good leader. He can also give shield tokens. A lot of times, though, I don't see people doing the shield token thing. A lot of times they're just taking the initiative because at the end of the day, Luke is just there to be sort of a Voltron as well, because you can play Luke's lightsaber on him, heal the damage, give him a shield token, and Luke can then just start smacking face and winning the game. You're going to be gaining so much life, your opponent can't race you, and you can snowball really quickly. So he also can help keep your restore units alive by giving them shield tokens. Like a lot of times giving Yoda a shield token is so good because then almost no deck can stop that card unless they bounce it to hand. And then Yoda's just going to keep attacking in and gaining 2 life like a crazy Jedi Master. So just a really fun deck to play against. I played my Sabine list, and I kid you not, I don't think a single Sabine list will ever beat this deck. It just has so much restore and so much removal. But I've actually seen it beat Tower number 9. He has an Iden red list, and this deck lost. His red Iden lost to this deck. It's beating other tier 1 decks. I've seen it by good pilots. So I think this deck is really good. So if you like Luke Skywalker, I do think that this is a legitimate competitive deck you can play. I'm not saying you're guaranteed to win your next tournament, but I think you'll give everyone a run for their money, and it's a very, very fun deck. The sideboard is really interesting. Plays Consortium Star Vipers, which are 3/3s with Restore 2 when you have the initiative. It's a really good ambush card against aggro. And then it plays another copy of Vanquish, another copy of Strike True to pull more removal in if necessary. And then it plays Make an Opening, which gives a unit -2/2 and heals you 2 damage from base. This is played to take down shield units. This deck does struggle with taking out shield units early. So Make an Opening is a way to kill those shielded units. Because when you give a shield unit -2/2, if its toughness is 0 or less, it dies immediately, even though it has a shield. So these are very situational sideboard tech here. And then here, this is obviously against the control matchup. You're going to be siding in more endgame. So we got Home 1 and Luke Skywalker, just more endgame because there's only 2 copies of them each in the deck. It's more removal with Luke. But Redemption is just really crazy, especially if you feel like you need to gain a bunch of life or keep all your units alive. Redemption can just do some crazy stuff, right? It has Sentinel, and when played, heal up to 8 damage from any number of units in her bases, deal that much damage to this unit. So you can heal 8 damage from base when you play this card, and that is crazy. I mean, against aggro, if you heal 8, I think aggro just loses on the spot. There's no way they're going to win the game. This card is very, very good. So I can totally see why they played the sideboard. I think there's an argument to be made that you could play this over Home 1, but Home 1 does allow you to replay units from your discard pile, and I think that you'd rather have that recursive in the main deck and then pull in Redemption for more endgame against other decks, so you can beat those other late game decks, or even pull in against, you probably pull the Home 1 out and pull in Redemption against aggro. So I think the sideboard's pretty smart as well. I think it's teched against everything. It's a good sideboard. And I want to give credit to Destiny Riku from the Discord. He actually made this deck and sent me the list so I could feature it. I think it's a very strong deck. I think it's really fun to play. And if you're looking to try something new, you've opened up a bunch of booster boxes, you don't necessarily want to play Bulba or all the meta decks, this is a deck you can play. Definitely huge shout out to Destiny Riku. I am going to link his deck list in the comments. Give it a heart, give it a thumbs up, add a comment to it. But if you, that's the deck. So if you guys like these videos, they do take quite a bit of time to put together, but I do feel like they are helping us as a community learn more about the game, get better, grow, and as the store showdowns are going to be happening, I hope to see a lot of these really fun and cool decks at those store showdowns. So I'd strongly suggest to watch some other videos on my channel. There's some other channels out there as well, but if you would just give me a like, a comment, and even please a subscribe, that really tells me that these videos are resonating and are really helpful. And I'm a dad, I have a full-time job, so I try to do these at night and things like that, and I really appreciate. Honestly, I just started this less than a month ago, and I'm almost at 800 subscribers. Probably be at 1,000 in about a week. This game is really fun, and I've just loved the community. So hope to hear from you, and let me know what you want to see next. Thanks.